They found they most closely resembled Neolithic people from Iberia, modern Spain and Portugal. Okay? These Iberian farmers were descended from people who had journeyed across the Mediterranean from Iberia, or somewhere close. The Mediterranean farmers traveled north through France. They might have entered Britain from the west through Wales or southwest England. Indeed, radiocarbon dates, careful because Dr. Hawass is not going to like this sentence, suggest that Neolithic people arrived marginally earlier in the west, but this remains a topic for future work. Okay, in addition to farming, the Neolithic migrants to, I think they use this term on purpose, and I say as an immigrant, by the way, but I know BBC well, to Britain appear to have introduced the tradition of building monuments using large stones known as megalithics. And this would be very interesting if it's true, and I hope they provide the basis, the foundational basis on this statement, and if it's true, I'll say thank you for teaching me something interesting. Stonehenge in Wiltshire was part of this tradition. Although Britain was inhabited by groups of Western hunter-gatherers, for some reasons in quotes, when the farmers arrived in about 4000 BC, DNA shows that the two groups did not mix very much at all. Great, so they lived in separate communities, fine. So they both exist though. The British hunter-gatherers were almost completely replaced by the Neolithic farmers, and that is the statement that I already find difficult to believe. I might have to dig deep with the team and have a look at this statement, because as I say, apart from one group in Western Scotland where the Neolithic inhabitants had elevated local ancestry, this could have come down to the farmer groups simply having greater numbers. Right. We don't find any detectable evidence at all for the local British Western hunter-gatherers' ancestry in the Neolithic farmers after they arrive, said co-author Dr. Tom Booth, a specialist in ancient DNA from the Natural History Museum in London. That doesn't mean they don't mix at all, it just means that maybe their population sizes were too small to have left any kind of genetic legacy. Co-author Professor Mark Thomas from UCL said he also favored a number of game explanation. Professor Thomas said that the Neolithic farmers had probably had to adapt their practices to different climatic conditions as they moved across Europe, but by the time they reached Britain, they were already tooled up and well prepared for growing crops in northwest European climate. Study also analyzes DNA from the British hunter-gatherers. One of the skeletons analyzed was that of Cheddar Man. This one was big area of contention, isn't it? Recently, the Cheddar Man. I remember reading a little bit about it. I was even thinking of making a video about it, but then I forgot about it. Whose skeletal remains have been dated to 7100 BC. He was the subject of a reconstruction unveiled at the Natural History Museum last year. DNA suggests that, like most other European hunter-gatherers of the time, he had dark skin combined with blue eyes. Still, that doesn't necessarily connect to the idea that he was black, though. So I would like to know how they then say, because dark skin doesn't automatically mean black, at least in the way we use the word today. So I think what I would do at this point, in order to avoid any possible manipulation of the public through linguistics and semantics, I would say let's first determine what you mean by black. Are we using the ancient terminology, so the way the Greeks and the Romans mentioned the Ethiopians, but in reality they mean everyone who would today be considered black in the African sense? What do you mean by black? I would really want to know. And the reason why I'm asking this is because even the term white is highly contested. It's not just a matter of black. Let me in fact establish my point before we continue. The term white, even today, is contested. We don't even need to go 200 years in the past and see what Benjamin Franklin thought of the term white, and if we did, we would find out that neither Scandinavians nor Irish nor Italians will be white, not even French will be white. I wouldn't be white. An Irishman who is as white as my freaking headphones wouldn't be considered white. So only, I would say, Anglo-Saxon, Western, English heritage will be considered white, and a little bit of Germanic, and that would be it. Spanish people wouldn't be white, so that's the Benjamin Franklin idea, and some people in America cling to that idea even today. But the thing is that it really depends on perspective. In fact, it's very easy. I'm going to ask the question now, am I white? And then you'll see people in the chat who will give different answers. So if you're black, you will say, yes, you're white. 100, I can tell you that 100%. If you're black and you're watching this, you'll call me white. No one in his right mind who is black will call me anything but white. People who are from Europe, it will depend, because generally, at least in Italian, and I imagine in Spanish too, we have an expression, l'uomo bianco, the white man. What we mean by that in Europe is European people. European. Southern, Northern, Western, European. Okay? We're all white from that point of view, from the perspective of European. Why? Because we mostly base it on the skin color. If your skin color is like this, you're white. Now, people in America today kind of depends. Some will say, no, you're not white, you're Italian, which is kind of silly because white is used for ethnicity. Italian is nationality, so there is a little bit of a weird overlap there. But yeah, some people will say you're not white, some people will say you're white, and so the point I'm trying to draw is not who's got the right terminology here on who's white and who's not. At the end of the day, you choose to use that nomenclature wherever you want. I'm saying it's debatable. Now, if white is debatable, even more so black will be debatable. Why? Because Africa has a higher percentage of phenotypic variance within phenotypic traits in their population clusters. In other words, yes, in Europe, maybe a bit more evident. Some people have red hair, some people blue eyes, green eyes, black hair, black eyes. Great. In Africa, there is more phenotypic variance. So if you don't want to use the term white because you think there is too much difference, then you should stop using the term black right now. From a scientific sense, from a linguistic sense, and from a phenotypic, so biological sense. If we don't establish first what do we mean by black, we cannot have a discussion on whether or not these early people, these early populations were black or not. And I hope that you know that I'm trying to establish this clearly, and I don't think they're doing this. And this is very typical. It's a manipulative attempt to use a word before you define its meaning so you can twist it. It was the subject of a reconstruction unveiled at the Natural History Museum last year. DNA suggests that, like most other European hunter-gatherers of the time, yeah, we read this. Genetic analysis shows that the Neolithic farmers, by contrast, were paler skinned with brown eyes and black or dark brown hair. Okay, great. So doesn't this already kind of debunk their own position? Towards the end of the Neolithic, in about 2450 BC, the descendants of the first farmers were themselves almost entirely replaced when a new population called the Bell Beaker people migrated from mainland Europe. So Britain saw two extreme genetic shifts in the space of a few thousand years. Professor Thomas said that this later event happened after the Neolithic population had been in decline for some time, both in Britain and across Europe. He cautioned against simplistic explanations invoking conflict and said the shift ultimately came down to economic factors about which lifestyle were best suited to exploit the landscape. And that's the end. Dr. Booth explained, open quotes, it's difficult to see whether the two genetic shifts could have anything in common. They are two very different kinds of change. There is speculation that they are, to some extent, population collapses, but the reasons suggested for those two collapses are different, so it could be just coincidence, close quote. Now, my question is, okay, I enjoyed reading it. It's very fun. I think they self-debunked themselves, but that could be just me, since at the end of the day, it's just a cursory reading. I do not understand what that has to do with this. They didn't provide any evidence that this was built by those whom we would identify as black people today. So I don't know what that one was based on. I'll have to review the DNA. This was just a cursory glance at this discussion. Probably make a dedicated video